becoming a big piece of our business life as well. As we heard some of the earlier speakers saying, is it can add significant value to the global economy and local economies. PwC estimated that AI could add by 2030 up to $15.7 trillion of value to the global economy. Stephen Hawking said, so it's certainly going to be a massive impact, and we're already starting to see it. Stephen Hawking has a famous quote around AI saying that it's either going to be the best or the worst thing to happen to humanity. Of course, we're all rooting for it to be the best. In terms of AI and following up on its opportunity, Valley started its journey some years ago. And we really had an ambition when we got started out of developing a center for evangelizing advanced analytics and AI across the organization, and having the AI Center develop industry-leading capability and driving the adoption through democratization and affecting the entire organization. We see AI and advanced analytics being used to identify and assess risks across the organization, being able to monitor our critical assets and prescribe actions based on the health of those assets. We see it being used to drive value across the entire supply chain and to drive optimization and automation. And we also see that it's going to transform our workplace and that we need to be prepared for that. With those as our ambitions, we really started to focus the AI Center on three main things. We focused on maintenance and all the aspects of maintenance, operational efficiency, as well as safety. For every dollar per ton of iron ore or every dollar per ton of nickel saved contributes $300 million to the bottom line. So making contributions towards that certainly is going to have a big impact on our organization. We organized the AI Center, as I mentioned earlier, like a COE. So we have we focused on being able to bring platforms and tools associated to be able to support AI. We also established governance and methodologies associated with AI and advanced analytics. One of the key things that we focused on is training and R&D. If we wanted to pursue a democratization approach, which is what our strategy is, we needed to make sure that we had the ability to be able to train people, and also R&D is critical to be able to stay on top of the ever-changing landscape associated with it. In addition to what would be normally a traditional center of excellence approach that we've taken, we also are really focused on providing capability and capacity to be able to do AI. So while democratization is a big piece of it, we also recognize, especially in the earlier days, that we needed to be able to do and to be able to have that capability within the organization. In terms of it, we've been pretty successful so far to date. We're proud of what we've accomplished, recognizing, of course, we have a long way to go. Over the first 5 years, we've delivered about 60 products. Those products, as you can see below, pretty much span across the supply chain. And they're not just across the supply chain and the value chain, but also across all the different locations in the world, major locations in the world that we operate. Over the last couple of years, we've trained over 500 people on the concepts of AI, and we operate a 1-week boot camp for people to get them really indoctrinated so that they can understand the basic concepts. They can even start learning and being able to apply some of those concepts. But it's mostly to be able to get people familiar with the opportunities. We're starting to see some fairly significant contributions of AI to the operation in terms of annualized benefits, and we've been seeing that grow each year. And over the last couple of years, we've also been recognized in terms of innovations for the expansion of our work into the AI. It hasn't been exactly a straight line to where we're going. It's been anything but straight. And looking back in hindsight, you can really see our journey. It ended up in three main phases so far today. And again, like I said, it's looking back. It certainly wasn't something that we had. And the three phases were: one was really getting ourselves started. The second was building confidence in the organization and ourselves. And the third, which is what we're pursuing currently right now, is really around business integration. And over the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to take you through some of the characteristics and things that we learned during each one of those phases. In terms of the first phase, which was getting started, we had some guiding principles. We were really trying to prove not just a value, but we had to prove the concepts to be able to get people to start thinking that this is a technology that can help. So our guiding principles was really being flexible. We needed to be able to pivot easily. We didn't have a roadmap, so we pursued value, and when we chased that value, however we had to. Moving rapidly, especially when you get started, there's not a lot of patience. So getting something and showing that value early is important. So we needed to move quickly. Being austere, especially getting started, people don't want to invest a huge amount of money in the organization, and you don't want to ask for it, or you're probably not going to get it. So money does matter. Failing fast. Probably one of the most early lessons that we learned was if it's not working, especially when you get started, cut bait and move on, continue to seek out value. Setting realistic expectations, it's one of the biggest challenges because when you put a team together and they're excited by the ability to use AI, I mean, you can really, you can visualize it, you can use it for just about anything. And you need to temper those and really set realistic expectations. The old adage, under promise and over deliver, is a really one that you want to hold tight to your heart. I mentioned already chasing value, follow the opportunities, and thinking big and starting small. Some of the critical activities and looking back that we saw is really making sure that we identified our market and target and looking for the biggest impact areas, but also the areas where there's fertile ground. One of the things as well was we needed to remove impediments. I think this is true of innovation in general, but many of our processes didn't lend themselves to our guiding principles above. Waterfall versus agile, procurement process, etc. So we were lucky to have the support of the executive to help move some of those out of the way so that we could actually follow our guiding principles. And another one which probably drove a lot of the suppliers crazy was we gained capability by shamelessly leveraging vendors and pulling in knowledge as required. We really asked a lot of questions. We talked to a lot of different companies that were providing it. 5 years ago, it was still pretty early days, and we used that information to help us develop our strategies going forward. In terms of the next phase, and again, this was more of an organic development, was really focusing on strategy, the ability to scale, and sustainability. Some of the guiding principles that we needed to consider when we got to this sort of phase of maturity was whether we should buy versus build. We didn't have and still don't have a primary goal to buy versus build. We did build a lot at the very beginning, but we did it based on value. So it really needs to be business based. Especially early on, we found that the market wasn't that mature, and that we were able to build solutions just as quickly and probably a little more effectively and cost effectively as well. That's changing, of course, as the marketplace matures and a lot of vendors have capability. Control the technology to us was one of our guiding principles as we started moving forward. We didn't want any black boxes because they're hard to manage. If you don't know what's going on, it's hard to fix it. And that's sort of the next guiding principle, which was this concept of that we learned that It's great if you're able to build something, especially if it's a pilot, but you also have to support it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But one of the things about applied AI and machine learning, even advanced analytics to a certain extent, is that what holds true today doesn't necessarily hold true tomorrow. And that you need a process to be able to constantly have your machine learnings and AI learning. Okay, and it won't happen without having a sustainability program in place. Building for scale also is important. Once you do your pilots, you don't want to be reinventing the wheel all the time. And we learned that if we started our pilot with the idea that we were going to roll it out and built it as a product, and again we'll talk a little bit about that later, that it really helped our maturity growth. Rolling out successes may seem obvious, but you need a strategy for it, and you need a strategy to share the successes that you have. And one of our guiding principles obviously is gain traction and to accelerate really rapidly, take advantage of the opportunities and really get out there. In terms of critical activities during this phase, we had the AI Center launch, and that's really our sustainability, and we'll talk about that in a second. We focused a fair bit on platform development. As I mentioned, we started building a lot of ours, and even if you're not building, if you want to bring in third-party products, you need a place to put those and to host them. So we built a lot of capability during this phase, and I think we've done a really good job and built a world-class platform, and it's really been paying off dividends to invest in them. Developing partnerships, both internal and external. Another critical, you can't do this alone. We certainly didn't. We developed relationships with multiple different partners that we could draw on, and they really gave us scale so that we could expand or contract depending on what we were wearing. They also brought in expertise that we didn't necessarily have. Developing R&D and training capability. As we had mentioned about the democratization, we're a relatively small group. We have about 25 full-time people with an expanded group of, say, another 15. So we need to rely on expanding our capabilities and democratizing and providing that. We're a mining company, and there's a lot of engineers in a mining company, and one universal truth about engineers is they love to build stuff. So it's an easy sell to get people out there. And probably one of the most critical concepts is this idea of pilot to product. We really needed to make sure that what we built was something that could be rolled out. And to do that, we needed to build the product. I mentioned about the sustainability. And what we recognized after our first few rollouts was that we weren't going to succeed if we didn't have a way to sustain it. So we established the AI Center, and in that center we have about 20 people. Many of them are contractors. And what they do is they not only physically support the technology, but we have a process where we work with the end users of the solutions. Ours are branded Sentinel. And they work together on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis, and they discuss the results of the machine learning algorithms. They discuss how they're using them. They make sure that they're current. We also provide advice on what to do about the findings that we have. For us, I think this is one of the biggest stepping stones that we had, and that I don't think we could have matured without building out this capability. And the last phase, which is the phase that we're currently in, is really about expanding AI programs and integrating with enterprise initiatives. When we got started, and this was by design, we were really just looking for opportunities, very opportunistic, really proving the concepts, proving out the value, really trying to gain a foothold within the organization. That's a bit of a scattershot approach, but it is effective at getting started. And where we are now is really trying to integrate what we've done. So instead of having AI solutions that provide value to the organization, it's to be working with the larger programs, with the bigger initiatives by the organization, and embedding AI into that as a solution proposal. Okay? So focusing on areas of high enterprise value, right? We don't want to be an insignificant nice to have. We really believe that AI is going to drive and change the mining industry in general. And to do that, we need to be at the forefront. We need to be able to derive significant enough value to get the attention of the organization and to be able to support it in terms of resources. Prioritization is key, so we needed to pare back the areas that we were focusing on because, as I mentioned, we were looking wide, so now we're really starting to focus on where the absolute most value is and going deeper and digging in on that. And planning for the long term. Right? This is a disruptive technology. It's disrupting our day-to-day, and it's really just in its infancy. Nobody knows where this is going to go, but I will say for sure it's something that's going to be that's going to have a massive impact on all of us. In terms of critical activities, we identify and focus on our big bets, integrate cross-functionally, and this means just really working with all the different teams, engineering, operations, corporate, everybody, and going from not just products now, but to these larger programs. And I'm just going to finish up quickly by sharing with you two sort of examples that would demonstrate sort of that maturity curve, as well as to give you some ideas of how we're currently using it. When we got started, we started with tires. It was we didn't have any money, we didn't have any software, we had an idea, and we had a gracious maintenance manager that allowed us to come up. At the time, tires were super expensive, and you couldn't get them to be able to fill them. So we had some early success that's just doing a basic anomaly detection. And from that, and from looking at what was starting to develop in the industry, we built out a product-based approach for asset health and asset maintenance, really focusing on core tenets of anomaly detection, and then using anomaly detection, which is really identifying when things aren't working, to failure prediction, which is determining things like remaining useful life, that type of thing. Prescriptive, so not just identifying that there's something wrong and what it is, but what you should do about it. And this is one of the areas we're really focusing on expanding that capability, and then actually closing the loop and automatically creating the work orders. We have the capability, but we haven't done that yet. We've taken the tires, though, and we expanded it. And now we have into a program where we're looking at haul trucks, loaders, excavators, scoops, all of our mobile equipment. And we've expanded it past just tires, and we're looking at things like engines and transmissions. We're looking at fuel consumption, and in fact how those mobile equipments work in the mining process. And the last one, and I'll just go quickly through this, is around our plants. And really there, we started in the same fashion, started with processing, optimizing process fans, right? Seeing how we can get more out of them, consumption of material, inputs, energy and stuff like that. Then we started looking at how we can automate the crushers, so the screens and seeing the particle size, and being able to automatically adjust the conveyor speed based on the particle size, right? And we closed the loop there, where we now have the video analytics automatically controlling the conveyor. So now that there's no people involved, it's both safer and it's also more effective from an efficiency perspective. And then taking that to the program where we're actually looking at the overall plant and how we can optimize all of the inputs and using algorithmic advanced analytics to be able to do that. So I wanted to thank you very much for your time. That is a fairly brief look at it, and go to questions if we have any.
Thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, we've got one question so far. No, two. Here we go. Do you have or develop a data strategy to support? Data strategy to support the AI agenda? Why or why not?
We do. It's not as big a data strategy as we have. But we have taken an approach we didn't take a wide approach. In other words, what we didn't do is we didn't just go and build like a massive data warehouse for all the things we want. It was really built incrementally based on the outcomes we were achieving. But we did have a strategy so that we could expand on that. And it's really a digital twin type approach. So when we started with the tires, we started collecting data for the tires. When we moved to the transmissions and the haul trucks and stuff, we started adding that data into it. So it was more of an incremental build approach. We still have a long way to go, but we were able to leverage that. Instead of taking a monolithic approach, where you start with a big data warehouse and you're not sure what the questions are you're going to answer, and then you try and hone it in. So that's really been our approach. But it's an area that we intend on expanding as we expand the AI capabilities.
Okay. There's actually quite a few questions in the chat for you, but we're out of time. I was just wondering, maybe if you've got time, go in and answer them in the chat. I'll try to run through and see if there's any, but they're all very different and interesting questions. So if you wouldn't mind popping them in the chat and having a look at those, that would be absolutely appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Okay, bye-bye.